Hello, my name is Amber and welcome to my creative space. Today we're going to be working on a sewing project, so let me show you the problem I'm going to try to solve. Here we are in the living room, and as you can see behind me there's the recliner where I sit to do most of my crocheting, and beside it you see the little metal side table with everything piled on it. And of course there's very cute Snickers in her usual space. Whenever I'm sitting there, that's where she usually sits. So, in my crochet corner, I have, like I said, this table beside me with all sorts of stuff. And when I'm actively working on a project, the project oftentimes is just set on top of here because that's where my yarn bowl is. And I find that a lot of this stuff that's just laying on here can get pulled off and dragged and dropped down below, which is frustrating. And also, even without a project going with it supposedly clean, it looks messy with all this stuff sitting out. So my objective today is to create some sort of hanging organizer to hang off of the side of this metal table that'll have pouches for the different things I want to have next to my chair. So the things that I definitely want to make room for are the remote control for the TV, a pen and a pencil, and let's say a highlighter in case I'm working on a pattern that needs highlighting. And then after that, it's like, oh, that'd be nice. So I have a hair clip that I'm imagining can just clip to the side of the organizer and just hang down here. I have my container of stitch markers, which part of me says there's no point in doing it because it may not be there, maybe in a bag somewhere, but a lot of times it is sitting up here, so maybe I should make room for that. Same thing for my darning needles and my little cutter for my yarn. And then we have Toby's brush or comb and Snickers brush or comb. Often I find that if they're sitting out, then I'm more likely to just grab them and use them in the moment rather than going over to the box where they often live and pulling them out. And then on here I have a pad of post-it notes for notes. I have an extra pencil, but I can put this away. I don't need to have two pencils over here. And then this is just one particular needle that I often use. And I was just thinking I can pull out another one that is commonly used. So this is another one that I am currently commonly using. Obviously these are Tunisian needles and they're long. And somehow I turned on the TV. Now there are shorter needles, but I haven't been in the habit of using them. So this is where it gets kind of, how do I organize these pockets? I can't organize them so that everything under the sun can fit in them, but I should probably focus on organizing them for the things that are most likely next to my desk or my chair. So I'm going to skip these needles because they're either going to be in a project or in a bag. So I'm not going to consider those in my pockets. But the rest of this stuff in my lap needs to be considered in the pockets. So let's take these things over to the dining room. So we're back in the living room because I forgot to measure a very important measurement. The whole premise of this, to have the hanging pockets, is that it'll go underneath this cutting board on top of this table. So I need the width of the cutting board because that's going to be the width of my project. And you might be wondering why in the world is there a cutting board on top of this table? Because this is a touch lamp. And evidently when you put a metal touch lamp on top of a metal table, weird things happen. The cutting board is acting as a buffer for the metal. That's why. So let's see if I can do this one-handed. So the cutting board is 9.5 inches. And you know, no more than 14 inches long, but I don't think I'll even need that much. And then the table cutting board itself is 15 inches wide this way. So 9 9.5 by 9.5 by 15. And I was thinking if I have fabric going underneath the whole thing for 15 inches, that should be plenty. And just the act of sandwiching the fabric between the two things will be enough to support, because the things I'm putting in these pockets aren't necessarily crazy heavy. Okay, so in terms of fabric, there's this fabric that we used for some seat covers. I'm pretty sure we filmed that process. I can link that video. But we have several chunks of it, and it's good weight upholstery fabric, kind of like a felty back to it. And I thought this could be the main fabric facing me and covering the pockets and everything. And then I didn't really want to use this fabric for the back of everything, so I have old jeans that I'm going to do as the backing. So this will be the front, that'll be the back. And then West and I were just talking about pocket design, and we were saying the whole thing is 9.5 inches wide. So 9.5. Okay, this is roughly 9.5 or 9-ish. So the idea is these bulky things are going to be in their own pocket in the back. It'll just be one big pocket. And then in front of that is going to be individual pockets for remote controller, and the pins, and highlighter. So that's a second layer of pockets. And then in front of that will be little pockets for the little things. And I have 4 different little things can go in the front. So I don't know if this doesn't make any sense, but that's the idea. So if you can't tell, I'm winging this and just trying to figure it out as I go. So if we have the finished thing is going to be 9.5, so I probably should cut fabric to 10 inches wide. And we were talking about the fabric will go over the table and come down for the pockets, but on the other side of the fabric, other side of the table, I don't want it to just be a smooth piece of fabric between the cutting board and the table, because if it gets pulled, it'll just be pulled out. So I want to kind of make a lump over on that side, like a chunky seam or a chunky seam allowance. Side to side is going to be 10 inches. And for this stuff, hanging off the edge, it says 9 inches. I'm just wondering if all the bases of the pocket should be all lined up in the bottom, because it might just make really bulky and full, or if I should stagger them so they end at different lengths. This one. So that would be staggered, and then that would be the bottom, or even more so. How about that? So these two are higher, then there's another layer here, then there's a little pocket for the post-it notes, and then lower there's to meet this one, and it should fit so things aren't on top of each other, they're kind of laying on top of each other, or laying sandwiched between each other, staggered. So overall, this design is, I said 14 would be too much. This is about basically 14. But this is going to be seamed, and that, so it'll be 13 inches long. But then I have to add extra for seams. So I can just call it 14. So it'll be 10 wide, 14 long, plus the 15. So 14 down. Did I say 15 or 19? I'm pretty sure it's 15. And then extra for the bump on the other side. So I don't know, let's call it 2. So 29. 31 inches, so 10 by 31. And I had an idea that maybe my embroidery project could go on here somewhere, but with all these pockets, I'm thinking it's not going to happen, because if it was just a solid front, maybe, but I don't think it's going to work, so I'll put that away for another day. So, I just realized this is just the front piece. This isn't all the pockets. So, let us square this up. Or maybe I should try ironing it first. That sounds like a wise thing to do. Okay, so squaring things up. I do appreciate a cutting mat and a rotary cutting tool. I don't think I've tried to do projects like this without this. It's definitely come in handy. I got this in college. Okay, so 2 edges are good. With those 2 edges. Nice thing is this fabric, being upholstery fabric, is pretty stable. It's not distorting. Okay, so we have a nice squared off piece of fabric that is just shy of 31. It's 30 and 3/4 and 13 and a half. And I said 10. So 3.5 inches off the side. Two, three, yeah. Okay, so that is my long front facing piece. I feel the urge to go test fit it. I think that works. So it's maybe a little bit narrow. Maybe I didn't do it wide enough. Maybe 10 inches wasn't wide enough, but no, this is all made up. So who's saying what's enough? I'm just saying it's not going to go edge to edge on the cutting board necessarily. Okay, so I need a matching piece of jeans. I suppose I should sew them together. So this is right side to right side. And if I sew that, then turn it inside out, then my idea is the pockets are just going to be patch pockets. So I just do a square and fold in the edges into a seam and then sew it onto the fabric. So I don't know. I probably should do the patches first and then do the outside edges so everything is bound together on the sides. So I think we're going to move on to patches. So if this is the piece hanging down in front of me, and this is what I want to do, so we have the first patch will be the whole length, so we're doing, let's do it for 10, and then it's going to be 5 inches deep, so I'll do it 6 to allow seams, and these are only 3 wide, so I need some more fabric. So I said 10 by 6, right? 10 by 6. That's just one piece of fabric. That looks rather square. Okay, so our first patch goes there. And for this first patch, I need to put a seam on the top and the bottom at least. And now I need to care about the color of the thread. If I want to see it, if I don't want to see it. Because currently it just says green. Honestly, I think green's fine. So I'm just going to go ahead and I've only rolled this once. I didn't roll it twice because I really don't think this is really a fabric that's going to unravel or shred. So I'm going to do just a zigzag stitch over the edge to secure the edge. So that's the plan. So the edges are done, and it's not necessarily just a zigzag stitch. It's one that has a straight line on one side and a zigzag on the other side. So it's meant for securing edges. So first pocket done. So the second pocket is going to be for these, and this is the one that's going to have individual things for it. I really think it can be the same size, except it's going to need to be longer because each time I seam it, it needs to allow room for things to do like that. So it'll be same height, but just longer. So how much longer? I don't know. Just thinking about instructions. This is going to be the far back, and that's going to be down on the backing. This next one is going to be on top, and this part will need to go on the backing too. So it actually needs to be longer than that, because that was 6 and it's not even reaching down to where the bottom is. So I'd say maybe 7 then. And 'this much more in length. So that's 2.5, so let's just call it 3. So three plus 10, so we're going to do 13, and then this one was I said 7. So 7 by 13 for the next pocket. So, yeah, it'll fit. Okay. So 7 by 13. It looks huge, but it'll have ripples. So let me do the top and the bottom. What do you call it? Iron it a little bit. So I have had a late lunch. We're going back to this, and West was pointing out that attaching these pockets and the order that we attach them in is going to be very important in order to have that big open pocket in the very back. So at least for these two pockets, the pocket with all the individual compartments needs to be sewn to this big pocket before this big pocket gets attached down, or else when I do all the individual slots, then obviously it'll mess up the back pocket behind it. The idea also is that the pocket for the post-it notes will just be floating around on top somewhere. So that's the piece I'm going to work on now, is just, we pulled out a full post-it note pad. I'm going to measure that, and just cut it out. The piece that'll just be floating on top somewhere. And there's a possibility that one will have to be hand stitched. I'm not sure. And it has brought up questions in my mind as to how these little ones down here are going to work unless I space it in such a way that there's like no overlap. And then I can do the pouches. I'm not sure. But first, Post-it note. So this was this piece I've cut off before that's 3 inches wide. I think that's plenty. So now it's just a matter of how wide to go around the whole thing. So I'm not going to be exact with this. Just going to say to here-ish. Okay, so we have a little square for Post-it notes. And, oh dear, that's going to be really tight. I probably need to remake it. Darn it. Okay. Think. I'm trying to decide if the height needs to change too, because if I pinch that down and say that's going to be sewed down to the thing, then there's a little edge sticking out, which I actually think that should be fine because that gives you something to grip onto. So it's just the width that needs to grow by probably an inch or more. That's annoying. I don't like remaking things. So if I'm just try this much, which seems like it'll be ridiculously large, but we will see. My bobbin assembly came undone underneath, so I'm going to need to borrow my phone from you and go on YouTube and remember how to put it back together again. I know it's not broken, it's just I don't remember exactly how it goes back together again. Okay, thank you for the use of my phone, and I got it back together with a little bit of trying, and we'll see how it sews now. Hopefully it's all good. Okay, so it works. I do notice that this fabric is putting a lot of fuzz down underneath, so I'm going to have to do a little bit of cleaning afterwards. And my sewing machine just has a really hard time getting, it does a corner, but to advance the fabric after the corner with this fabric, it's having a hard time. So it's like I have to do the corner and then pull the fabric a little bit and then continue, and then it'll walk the rest of the fabric through. So I don't know why, but that's what I've been noticing on this project. So 2 more edges. It's bigger than the other one. You can even see that. So, yes, plenty of room to go around it. So that is the Post-it note pocket. And now we're moving on to the bottom ones, which are these 3 things. Is there anything else? So post-it note could go there. Then these two pockets can go on top, and this can just be a separate thing down here, so there's no pockets interfering with pockets issues. But I'm thinking it needs to be wider than this because I just had an issue where I did it and it ended up being too small. So it needs to be wider than this. I'm trying to figure out how long it needs to be. And this, I could put the post-it notes down here. Maybe. That goes there. Goes. Can you try taking the post-it note out, in and out? Of course, that is in plastic, so try doing the other one.
It's too small.
So, thoughts? My thumbs won't be in the way.
That's the bare minimum.
Okay, so I'm just concerned that this one is going to be lost if I make it too deep. I guess I can also just sew around it, do another sewing inside the pocket if it ends up being too deep to make it smaller, so it stands out. So I think this is the right length, plus extras for the edge. Oh, I hope I'm doing all this right. Two. So extra for the edge, all the edges. Should I go inches extra, or just a little bit extra? Now I don't know how long that was. So this is the new piece. That's the not used piece. Be cautious and just do this. I might have to redo an edge if it's too long. Okay, so on this one, I'm just going to do a top and bottom. What do you call it? Hem. Because the side hem should be enclosed in all the sides. I believe I have all the pockets cut out. Honey, I have a question. Can you look at this with me and verify my thinking? So, this is the front. This is the back. And then this long pocket goes in the bottom. Then these pockets get sewn together to make the lumpy things, and they go there-ish. And then this one can float around here, but I don't know if I even need it now since we made room for Post-it notes down there. So why not even do that?
I would start. I would leave a gap so you have room to grab stuff.
Okay. So this doesn't have to be at the very bottom.
No.
So I'm thinking the first step is actually to sew this one on with appropriate rooms for everything.
So one side, then pin where you want the other ones.
Yeah, just on this fabric, and then do it, put these two together, and then sew it onto there, and then do the whole.
Attach the back.
Attach the back. Which is going to be interesting because you usually do that
It's
right sides to right sides, and then you flip it inside out. And then also figure out how to put that bump over in here, which I'm thinking about using this. Just put that inside of it and sew on the other side of it. Okay, so first step is this, but not at the bottom, a little bit above the bottom.
Okay.
Right?
Sounds like it.
Okay. After all that redoing the Post-it note thing, I ended up not needing it, but oh well. So, not the back, not those two pockets, just this. And my objects. I'm going to sew an edge together. So, sew these two edges. There-ish. Okay. Now, how is that going to work? Because the bottom needs to be closed. So I just go straight over. Really? Okay, so this is going to be interesting because with this being so bulky, the bottom's open, but I'm thinking about stitching the bottom kind of closed. It won't be completely closed, but if this is the object that's going to be in there, then theoretically it should be fine. So this is where it needs to go. So that works. Next. I think I'm just going to do this. good thing this is just for me because it's not going to look, it's going to look handmade. Okay, so post-it notes, it's fine. And I can even put a bottom line on that one. I think for the rest of these I'll be putting a bottom line on. This one I just can't because it won't reach. So next. Why do I have so much room? I was doing the mock-up, but didn't have this much room. Okay. Okay. And that's just going to be a little pinch on the bottom when I go over it, which is fine. So, okay, so fits. Just feel like I'm missing something. There's so much room over here. So, reality, I'm going to just stitch the edge down and then, I don't know. There's just way too much room for this object. That goes there, there, there. That one can't go down. These ones all will go down. But this one has all this space to go. Well, let's just do what I've been doing. Let's do the edge together, so I know that much. Might help not to be loaded. One thing occurred to me is I probably started too far over to the right hand side because this was supposed to be, there needs to be a seam allowance to attach to the backing. And now, after all the effort in the beginning of this video of making a backing, I'm wondering, do I even need a backing? If I don't have a backing, I at least need a binding to bind the edge. It's a very sturdy fabric. But this, I'm having a hard time imagining this going into a seam. Well, it'll go into the seam, it'll just, I don't know. Okay, so back to this object. Still a whole another gappy compartment for something else. Guess that's not a bad thing. Sure, I'll find something to put into it. Let's not use a bent pin. Okay. Then while I'm over there, I'm going to stitch down the bottoms of these last compartments. Well, maybe I'll need to pin it first, I don't know. Okay, so put objects in. This is the one I was afraid I'm going to lose it underneath, so I want to put a line of stitching to make the compartment smaller so it sticks out. So I want it that. This one won't go down because it has the top, so even though it's a little bit deep for it, it's okay. So how do you pin lumps? Okay, I'm going to try sewing the bottoms of these now. So this one, the mystery compartment's going to be down at the bottom. This one's going to be, I'm going to do it down at the bottom basically all the way around. I'm just going back and do a little higher one for this one compartment. Okay, so doesn't even stick out. And this one I shortened, so it could be shorter. I can reach in there and get that. And same thing with that, although it'd be better if it was there. Do I want? It's a big enough pouch I can reach into it. Okay, just need to test that one. Yeah, it's still sticking out a little bit. Now, to solve the problem of the base of this, I'm going to sew. I will probably do that by hand because it's just dinky. Just sew some diagonals in the bottom of that to keep it closed, because if not, it goes, well, it doesn't intentionally go all the way through, but it could. Moving on to these ones. So we have the pocket behind and the pocket in front. Pocket behind is the same width as the bottom. Pocket in front is not, because we were allowing room for stuff. So, first step is to sew these edges together. Probably like that. So we have a joined edge. Now, repeat the same process that I did below, but probably leaving a little bit more room on this side. Although, if the bottom one doesn't have room for it, then I don't know if this necessarily does, needs to. It would be okay if this had more wiggle room. And also saying this is going to be stitched to the bottom. Let's see. So there should be fine. It ends there anyways. Okay. Okay. So, compartment. Now, to put this. Did I not offset it enough? I think I did. I'm just wondering if for these two, if it really should be two pouches or just have one that things can go in. I think one would be fine. So we're going to do a line here. And a line here probably. Not, that might actually move. So let's do this one because to allow room over the pins, this will probably come in some. So let's do this one first. And if the dog utensils get put away, then I'll have a bonus pouch here for needles. So let's do this. Okay, now 2 pins. So we have those. We have room for that to rest. We need room for this to rest. And then we have another pouch on the other side of it. So let's just say here. In reality, it'll take up some room. So let's do this because it doesn't need to have any bumps for anything specific. So now the last one, same pencil. I don't think it needs to be tight. I want to allow room for it. So I think this becomes our edge. And at this point, I can actually cut off this extra fabric on the edge. Or I can sew it and then cut it. It's fun. It'll be easier if I cut it. It's just sewing the two edges together. Or, I don't know. Maybe I'll sew it from this direction so I can actually see it. So, now this goes there. And we can test everything, which should not be a big deal. Allows room for these to be in there behind it if they want to be in those positions. In reality, it's one big pocket so they can go everywhere. Now, this bottom piece will not be sewn in yet. Oy, this is where the issue comes in. I need to unpick some of these so I can sew this bottom down, and then I can go and sew the next one down. So unpick. Okay. So now the edge is exposed. But this is where we get to choose where it's going to be. And originally I had said be like 13. That's a lot longer than it was. So 13. So it's okay where it is. So we need to pin it. Helps if you pin all the fabric. It's very bent. Okay, just double check. Well, I can't double check. So, to sew the back pocket base. Okay. Now, to sew the bottom, and it has these ripples because of the allowance, mainly this one. So this needs to line up nicely. And this lines up. I'm just pinning where the seams of the pockets are coming down, and I'm going to have to go through and do these portions that were underneath the back pocket. Finally, I think it's safe to cut off this extra now. Okay. So now to sew this bottom line, and then while I'm over there, I'm also going to sew these. It's all underneath this main pocket, which I can chalk down so I know how far up to go. So the only one that's a little bit tricky is this one, where the controller goes, or the remote control. And I might try to put the extras in the corner. I think that looked nicer, rather than one clump in the middle. So, back. Okay, proof of concept. See if everything goes. Yes, and you still need to do the bottom for this. It has a bottom to it. those kind of get swallowed up, but I can latch the edges. There's that, and here we test this. Can go behind it. All the pieces. It's perfectly open behind it. Now, to actually go hang it next to the chair and see how long it is, if it's long enough, I'll kind of, what do you call it? If I mention I'm tired. How much is left over on the other side of the table to put that little roll of fabric so it doesn't get pulled through. So let's go see this. And let's see for the very first time it's actually hanging vertically. And I can take this off for a second. And put this over. Probably until there. That, so it's not falling down. That's promising. But I did notice that this really makes everything hang out and it's distorted. So I'm thinking about stitching this big pocket up, because if it has a support up the middle here, then it won't gap as much. And then this can just sit in here. There's plenty of room for this brush to go behind everything. So if that was stitched together, now that is higher than I had it. And Colby comb. Snickers brush. Oops. Have I mentioned I'm tired? I'm toying with the idea that the pouches are a little bit too deep and I want to make them more shallow, but I'm also wondering if I should just live with it and see how it does before automatically shortening something. I think that would probably be wiser, because I can always shorten things and it's not a big deal. Just add line of stitching, and that's definitely something I can do with hand stitching too. Now to look on the other side with the extra fabric and seeing what kind of roll we can put in there, and also seriously consider if I'm going to line this thing. Like I said, if I don't line it, then I would feel like I need to put a binding on the edges, because yes, it's not automatically fraying, but in the course of working with it, chunks have sort of come away. So it definitely needs a binding, if not an actual backing. So let's look over here. How much fabric do I have hanging over the edge? Wow, quite a bit. So I can definitely wrap that around something. So I think I'm going to show West and get his 2 cents on the backing idea. I basically decided I am going to not put a backing on it, but I will end up edging the project. Which is annoying because I went through all the effort to make this. And it's also annoying because I don't have any experience with edging things or binding things. It's not true. I think I did do a binding in college, but that was a long time ago. So I'm not really looking forward to that. So for this bump on the other side to keep it from pulling through easily, I was going to use the hem of the jean I cut off and just put it in here and sew it. So I marked where the edge of the table was. Plenty of leftover fabric. And then okay, so I folded it over once and sewed it generously. It was like an inch to half inch. And then I took it to the table and I just rolled it until the proper size. And then I did a true zigzag stitch, just catching the edge of the fold of the fabric, and it's done. And I didn't have to use this at all. Now I'm going to hand stitch the bottom of this one to give it a bottom. Trying to decide. Okay, so now it doesn't go through. It has a bottom. And it sticks out enough that I can grab it. So all that's left is edging. Welcome back to day 2 of this project. And I went to Walmart and picked up some extra wide double fold bias tape in brown to go around the edge of this. I have played with the idea of if I'm going to put a backing on it, since I did cut the backing fabric out, if maybe even make a pocket in the back and like a piece of cardboard can go in there, so that it's stiffer and less wobbly. One issue we found with that was, one, it adds weight to it, so then it's even more one-sided. And then 2, it kind of messes with this particular comb going in the pocket. It makes the pocket stiffer and harder to go into. So at the moment, I have decided I'm going to just put the bias tape on and live with it and see how it does. And if for some reason I want to modify it in the future, no big deal. It's homemade. Everything's made up by me anyways at this point. So first step is to pin on my bias tape all around the edges and then sew it in. And theoretically, that should be it. I should be done. But like I said, I have very limited experience with binding things. So we'll see how this goes. And last time I did use a big silk ribbon as my binding before. Well, silkish. I don't know if it was actually made from silk. So I would like to sit down today. I think that was part of why I got so tired yesterday, as I was standing and working on the project. When I was sitting at the sewing machine, you don't relax when you're sitting at the sewing machine. You're sitting up and forward and all that fun stuff. So I have project, I have the tape. Just sandwiching the edge of the fabric into the tape. And I think I'm going to pin not in line with the stitch, but perpendicular to the stitch. Maybe I will make myself one of those wrist pin cushions at some point. That seems like a very useful tool. Okay, when we get to the corner, go up. Go up a little ways and pin it, and then come back to the corner and deal with it. I think this begs the question, what, because this entire project was inspired by the fact that my TV remote control kept falling down and the battery case kept opening, and I kept getting concerned about it actually being damaged over time by falling. And then multiple pins falling off the table as I was pulling stuff on and off the table. And it was just those little concerns and annoyances of the day that inspired this project. So I'd be curious to know if you have little things like that that inspire projects in your life, and little issues that you can solve with a simple, relatively simple project like this. This is definitely, it seemed like a pretty straightforward thing to make, but it definitely took some thinking and some getting feedback from West to piece together the different steps and the order it should be done in. But if you haven't figured out, there's lots of things I do research and I do plan out and everything, but there's also lots of times I just fly by the seat of my pants and figure it out as I go. And this was one of those situations where I had an idea of what I wanted to do, but the actual step-by-step execution, I didn't do a whole lot of research about how to put together pockets like this. So who knows if this is a correct way of sewing things or not. I don't. So when I get to the end and this roll, I'm not sure how this bias tape's going to do. I kind of feel like just ending before I get there, but then the end is raw, so I'm not sure. It's a very bent pin. It needs to end somehow over here because I'm not going to go along the edge, the top edge of this. So I do think I'm going to end I think I'm going to end underneath the roll And I'm not sold on the roll shape and everything, or the length. I might end up doing the roll in the future. And then at that point, maybe I could deal with the edging at that point. But I'm going to cut a little bit longer than where I was going to end, so I can fold the bias tape back on itself. So it also has an edge. And hide it. Okay, so then to work up the other side. And I seem to remember somebody at some point telling me that when you're working with bias tape, make your stops and starts in the middle of a, not at a corner, but in the middle of something. And it just makes for a smoother stop and start. Don't know. Okay. So same thing with this one. I'm going to fold it in on itself so it has a finished edge. I'm going to actually take this pin off and then put this over it. And try to pin it. It's kind of thick. This one, I don't know that I can pin like I was doing everything else. Might need to go side to side. It's not pretty, but if it'll just hold there for a little bit, then it'll be fine. That's the thing with a lot of sewing videos I watch, they don't necessarily show the binding stage. I don't know that anybody really likes to do binding. Okay, so just like this side, I'm going to kind of skip the corner and just start pinning further up the side and let the corner be what it is. And then when I'm sewing around it, I'll have those edges to just decide which way I'm going to push them in the corner. I definitely consider this a custom solution to a custom problem. I know you can make your own bias tape, but it just seemed a whole lot simpler to go out and buy it pre-made for me. Definitely saves time, and it was rather inexpensive. I think this is $2 for 3 yards. I get really confused when you come to figuring out how much a yard is. So I almost bought 2 of them, but it looks like 1 is more than enough. For some reason I was thinking 3 yards is only 3 feet, but no, it's actually 9 feet. Which is crazy to think that this is almost 9 feet. same thing over here. I'm going to cut it a little bit longer than where I want it to end. And that is all I have left, which is actually a good chunk. I'm going to fold this in on itself until the end lands where I want it to. I think that's good. Okay. So we're all pinned down, and now it's going to the sewing machine and doing a straight stitch. On here where it ends, I'm not only going to do a stitch this way, but I'm going to also do a stitch that way, so it completely finishes the edge of the bias tape. So, to the sewing machine. Okay, so now we get to find out if I caught all of the bias tape on the back as well, or if I missed some. I got a little bit concerned where it was really thick. Right there I missed a little bit. There I missed a whole chunk. So I need to go over a couple sections here and see where it's lifted there. And this one just completely missed it. But this is a very thick area, so I'm not surprised. So this one I'm gonna, like I said, this is definitely gonna look homemade. And it's just for my use. So on those sections, I'm gonna sew from the back just to make sure I'm actually catching it. And obviously that's gonna make the front look different and not as neat and clean, but I'm more concerned about it catching than what it looks like. So. Okay, so on the other side, there's definitely, don't think you can see it, there's 2 lines of stitching there, but they're not horribly different. And over here, once again, 2 lines of stitching. I was able to kind of blend it in once I got to the end of it, but oh well. One advantage, if I had lined it, is, like I said, the back is kind of like felt, so it is picking up basically anything it touches. So if it had been lined, then it wouldn't have that tendency. But like I said, I think I'm going to try it this way. And if I get to the point where I'm like, it definitely needs lining, it definitely needs more stability, it definitely needs whatever, then I'll address it then and adjust it. And one thing I did do, I had talked about these bottom pockets might be too deep. I found out that my little scissors had a hole in it for hanging off of something. So I put a little piece of ribbon on it so I can easily grab it with the ribbon. I don't necessarily have to make this pocket any shorter to make it stick out. This one's not a big deal because, like I said, the top is a screw-on top, so I can just have the top there and it doesn't go further than the top. And Post-it notes, I think it's a wide enough pocket that things can come in and out of. And in the previous segment I did sew some lines in the bottom of this one, so it has a bottom to it now. So you can see I just stitched some corners in there, so now it won't go all the way down. And then we had remote control, 2 pins, and this works best if I put the little clippies on there. Helps them not get too deep. But if they did get too deep, I can just squeeze from the bottom, it'll be fine. And then we had Toby's comb and Snickers brush. So So let's go put this where it's going to live. So this I can put on here for the moment. So here's how it looks like from this side. And come around. And all the function. I think it looks neat and clean and organized. Everything has its home. And that is cleaner. This winder doesn't always have to sit up here. I've just used it recently, so I can take that off. It's not a big deal. So
Complete with puppy.
So thank you for joining me on this sewing adventure. Like I said, it's a custom solution to a custom problem, and I'd love to find out what you're working on and any niggling issues that you are considering finding solutions for. So until next time, I hope you have a wonderful day, and feel free to like and subscribe. Bye!